Call the meeting to order. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, Trish.
Mr. Pop?
Here.
Mr. Kramer?
Here.
Mrs. Brew?
Here.
Mr. Moraro?
Here.
Mr. Mangini?
Here.
Move on to approval of the agenda. If there's no questions on the agenda, do I have a motion?
I make a motion, we approve the agenda as stated. Support.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes.
Mr. Moraro?
Yes.
Mr. Mangini?
Yes.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Move on to approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of August 21st, 2023.
I make a motion, we approve minutes for regular meeting of August 21st, 2023.
Support.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes.
Mr. Moraro?
Yes.
Mr. Mangini?
Yes.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Move on to approval of manifest 2023-17. Scott, did you have any questions?
I have nothing for tonight.
Brett?
I have none, thank you.
Jeff?
I do, Kent. Page 3, under electric transmission distribution. We'd only see parts with Irby Company for about $11,711. What's that?
That is one reel of electrical conduit replacement.
Was it budgeted?
It's parts. It's
Okay.
just maintenance.
Page,
Which one was that?
page 3, Irby.
This is parts, it's one reel.
Okay.
Pretty expensive conduit, eh? For one there, wow. Page 4, guys, hydro. I'm assuming that's maintenance to turn up a unit 4?
For the 6.9, that one?
Yeah, pretty much the whole column, yeah.
Yep, so the 6.9 for unit 3 and 4, that was just parts and troubleshooting issues they're having with 3 and 4. I kind of speak on this whole thing really quick. And then the one below that, that's 12,000. That's part of an insurance claim after we got hit by lightning. So when we got hit by lightning, one thing that we were working on started snowballing into other problems that were related to that. So we have an insurance claim coming of 100,000+ in issues from that incident. I did talk to Scott today, and what we're working on is kind of giving you guys a full kind of rundown of kind of this, what you're seeing here, the issues that we're having in some of those units, and we're still working through and problem solving so we can give you a better idea of what everything we're dealing with right now. So that is forthcoming. That's all kind of.
Is that, well, the lightning one we got knocked offline, was the other one part of this problem too when we got knocked offline?
Yes, it all started, it's all compounding
Okay.
on it.
Yeah, I was
So
gonna
this
ask.
all can be covered under insurance?
Not the 6.9, that was something we were working prior to that, and then we got hit by lightning, and then the 12,000 and things related to that initial repair, other things were found after that lightning strike. So, yeah, we're gonna write up a whole kind of after-action report of everything that's going on, but we didn't want to do it prematurely until we really understand everything that's going on.
And that 12 grand's under the water fund?
No, that's hydro.
No. that's
Oh, up
fine.
there, yeah, okay.
The water, that 12, yeah, that was the insurance claim as well from a different lightning strike that knocked out that equipment. And
Insurance
that
claims
was-
we're supposed to get money, not spend money. So we're gonna have a rundown of all this when it's said and done. What's this, yeah, okay. What's the status of unit 3 and 4 right now? Are they both offline?
No, I don't think they're both offline. I don't know exactly. I'm not that well versed in that. I don't want to speak incorrectly. So that's why we're having an entire report drawn up to kind of go over all of this.
I think 4 is out.
It was, when I was down there last, it's been a while,
Yeah, so yeah, this has been
like all summer.
a whole ordeal for a while.
Yeah, I'd like to definitely do a deep dive on that once we have the info.
Yep.
That's all I have, Madam Mayor.
Rico?
No questions.
I have one, and it's on the first page, capital improvement, new equipment.
Yep.
Lenovo ThinkPad support, Premier
Yep,
support.
that
What
was,
is that?
so, that's when, with the new,
What
school
department?
resource officer.
Very
they
first one.
took
General
my-
fund?
Yep, that's a laptop. They took my laptop for the
Oh,
new
that's right.
officer, and that was my replacement.
Okay. I remember talking about that, now that you said that. And the only other, thing I'd like to mention is on page 5 of 6. Five of 6. I just wanna, say down there, this payout, $609,536.41 was paid out. We collect the taxes, and then we have to, give the, county treasurers, the school, Dickinson Iron, ISD, all the other ones, so out of the taxes we collected, we had to pay out $609,536.41. Out of the $815,704.71, so there was, really manifest was only like 200 and some thousand, and the rest was, appropriated to who we had collected them for.
Correct.
Yeah.
We take in the tax payments, we take our share, and then we shift off the rest of the appropriate entities.
Because sometimes people don't understand that when they pay their taxes, they think that when we collect the taxes, we get all of it. Just so, people understand, we don't collect all of it, we do have to give it to the appropriate people. That's all I have. If there is any other questions, ask now. If not, do I have a motion?
I make a motion to approve manifest 2023-17 in the amount of $815,704.71.
Support.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Mr. Mararo?
Yes.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes?
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
We have no previous questions. I'll move on to public comment. This is on any item of interest. Anyone in attendance wishing to address the council on any item of interest shall do so now at the podium. State your name and address for the record. Comments shall be limited to 3 minutes per person. We have none. Public comment, agenda items. Anyone in attendance wishing to address the council on an agenda item only shall do so now at the podium. State your name and address for the record. Comments shall be limited to 3 minutes.
My name's Brian Weary, live at 625 Saginaw Street, here to address the Christ Oil expansion. I think the biggest issue we have with it, as far as the neighbors, is the trucks making the right-hand turn onto Saginaw Street off of US 2 to try to get into the thing. They cannot make the turn legally because you got to come into oncoming traffic. If any of you take a look at the corner now, you can see almost 15 feet into my yard where they drive into it all the time. It doesn't matter if it's a 53-foot truck or a logging truck. Whether they can't or won't make the turn is the big issue. We also have the school buses going down there and all the traffic from Holy Spirit. Now, I know Mr. Graff here is going to present, I believe today, that no trucks make right turns on Saginaw Street, which would be wonderful. Also, I would like to propose that if we could make a sign going into the lot, that's a truck exit and not an entrance off of Saginaw Street.
Yeah.
So we have no trucks going in off of that. The argument for the no trucks before was that because of the school, you had deliveries down there. But there is an alternate route going down off US 8 to make the right-hand turn into Saginaw Street into the school down there. So the trucks can still get in there to make deliveries without going down Saginaw Street.
And what was your name again?
Brian Weary?
Okay, so that was your wife that came in?
Yes, yes it
Okay.
was, yes.
She definitely was on either side of the issue.
Well, no, we're both on the same side of the issue. Neither one of us are for it, but I'm not necessarily saying I'm 100% against it. We just got to try to make it where it's workable if we're going to do this, because right now it's not workable.
We agree.
It is a nightmare out there right now between the trucks idling. We did get finally the truck stop parking there, which is great. But, you know, we will have the issues with, if the truck's coming in the other way, the lights are going to be in my window every time. They're going to sit there. I mean, it's going to be an issue to address. You know, trucks idling while they're fueling with a neighbor right next door and across the street. You can put signs up that say no idling, you know, shut your trucks off, but they won't do it.
Right.
I mean, I don't care where you go. They all have the signs, because actually it's illegal to leave your truck idling while you're fueling, but they still do it. So that's all I got. If we could definitely stop the trucks down there, you know, going down the Saginaw Street, which there's really no reason for them anyway to be down there, so.
All right,
Okay.
thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Brian.
Yep.
Appreciate your input.
We'll move on to appointments, announcement, presentations.
Did they want to?
Would you like us to freshen up our presentation, or is it?
I'm gonna let you talk before, when we get to you.
Yes, that's
Is that all right? Because otherwise you're gonna only have 3 minutes,
No, that's fine. Okay, thank you.
unless you wanna get up now. No. Item number 1, DPW garage door replacement purchase request.
So this is a different topic than the request from the electric department. That request I've held off because Scott's been busy and I wanted to hear from that. This is for the DPW garage doors. This also was discussed during budget. It was in budget and is currently in the budget. I asked to see if Public Works could be here. They were unavailable. Again, this was budgeted for. It is a large door. It's a door they use multiple times every day. It's, my understanding, the original door from that building. It sounded like a couple of you did go down there to take a look.
I did look at it.
Okay. It is some rusting points. I think it is becoming,
It's almost
A problem.
becoming a hazard.
I should have bought stock in garage door companies.
right.
How many garage doors we got coming up here?
So hopefully this one will last. We do move forward as long as the last one. If you'd like, again, like the other one, if you want to, we could, if you want everyone to spend time to go down there and look at it, we can do that. We don't have photos attached. If you want to move forward, Rick did have 3 quotes. You know, his recommendation is from Delta Door. That's the cheapest at $17,261. The only reason I put in my recommendation not to exceed 20 is simply because we budgeted 20, and while I would expect it to be at $17,261, if something happened to come up, we're not surprised if it went to, you know, a little bit over. At that point, let's just make it a little simpler process. So if you're so inclined to move forward right now, we do have a recommendation.
And that's installation and everything,
Correct.
right?
Yeah.
So there's no shipping of the door, they probably will bring that.
That
with
it should
them.
be full, should be all inclusive of
Included.
$17,261.
Yeah,
We budgeted 20 for it.
I looked at it too. It's,
What was that garage door? Any idea?
They said as old as the building, and I don't know how old exactly.
That's a Northland building. It's old.
Yeah.
Mhm. It's old, and it's almost getting to be a hazard, because if that spring in
That's
that
gonna be-
lets loose on the top.
It's gotta be close to 30 years old then.
And if it's getting waterlogged, it's getting heavy,
Yep.
so.
Okay.
Do I have any other questions? If not, do I have a motion?
I'll recommend that council approve the replacement of the garage doors using Delta Door Company at an estimated cost of $17,261 and not to exceed the budgeted amount of $20,000.
Mr. Marraro?
Yes.
Mr. Pop?
yes.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes?
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Special event requests, item number 2, Leif Erikson event.
This is our annual Leif Erikson event. Barb Thorne is present in the audience, if you guys would like to have her come up and speak on this event. This is only my second year with this event. The big change here is that it's just going to be one day on October 7th. Typically, it's gone 3 days. So they have scaled it back. I think the idea here is just trying to put all of our best stuff in one day and make it the best we can. But Barb is here if anyone would like to speak with her and ask any questions about this event.
Is there any major changes, Barb, from other years?
There's a lot of things that aren't happening that happened before. Like last year, we had the, at the museum, they had a big show about the Titanic, and they had the quilt show, and the dinner was like, we're not having the dinner this year, so it's just really condensed this year.
Okay.
One difference is we'd like to close off, is that 9th or 8th? Across the,
You're looking at, yeah, you're looking at going to close 9th Street on both sides of Main and 10th Street on the west side
And,
of Main.
okay. And where are the runners gonna,
Well, we have a separate, that's the
okay,
next one. That's
okay,
a-
we can
yep.
cover that.
So Barb, item 2 in that book? is
Main will
the-
stay open.
If you want to look at item 2
Well, the next one. I
is
have
what they're
request
looking at.
is-
Okay,
for the lead
Okay.
event. And then the run is item 3.
Yeah, we'll talk about the run after.
Yeah.
After this.
I just like to thank you for everything you do for this.
Oh,
This is
thank you.
amazing.
Thank you.
Maybe here to bring people in.
And I also would like to thank you, Barb, and the committee. I know it's a lot of work that you guys put into this, and it's really a good thing for our city, and it brings a lot of people in. I just appreciate everything all the volunteers do to put it together.
Thank you.
If
We
I-
have reviewed this with
Yeah.
the police and public works, and,
Mhm.
you know, we have no issues
All right.
with any of that.
If there's no other questions, do I have a motion?
I got questions. So we're gonna close off all of 9th and half of 10th in Main. So what's the plan to reroute the traffic?
So
May-
for this part, we're just doing, so for this portion, it's the 9th on either side of Main, and then 10th on the west side of Main. The Main Street component, that's gonna be for the run part of it. I don't know, I can speak kind of more on that, the next topic, if you want.
Well, before I vote on this, I guess I'd like to know how long Main is gonna be down.
Yep, so Main Street, my recommendation is that the race starts at 9. I'm saying 8:30 to at least 11. And then it would open up, because they're gonna start on Main Street this year, and they're gonna finish on Main Street this year. So we're gonna have runners out there to start and runners out there to finish. If we're gonna have this race, and we brought it downtown because we wanted to showcase our downtown, and it goes out into the Strawberry Lake area and those neighborhoods instead of by the school and through the township, we wanted to showcase Norway. And we have the band show. That's kind of the key component to a lot of this stuff, is to have it end there, announcements and everything. So if we're gonna have a festival like this, and we're gonna have runners in the street, we should be closing where they're gonna first start, and then where they're gonna finish, and then by 11, that would open back up, because now at that point, they're gonna be on the grass, on the band show.
And we're closing Main, like from
Just-
usual,
Just right here in front of City Hall.
just this block here?
Yep, that's, just like we do for Music in the Park. And then if we want to, the only other part that I'm suggesting for the very beginning of the race.
So you see, my issue is 9th's closed on both sides. People come down to the barricade on Main, and where they'd easily go down 9th Candy one way or the other, they can't. So now what are you gonna do?
Yep, so 9th, Barb, correct me if I'm wrong, we don't need to close this until after the race, right? Or do we need to have 9th closed at, I think it's at 11, right, by 11?
They have to set up the food booths, so I think we start at 9.
At 9, okay.
So
Yeah.
you're using both sides, you're gonna do food booths here
Cars gonna
and
go.
across?
Well, we've gotten some people that wanna, like, we have a guy that makes Viking knives, he wants to come.
Wait a minute. Why not?
So I wanna shut off that side of the street there's an author who has written Viking books and just like Viking-related stuff, in that area. like merchandise and things to look at for
So you're
people.
kind of keeping everything more down this
The
end?
more Viking stuff just right there. we'll still have the other craft fair and we'll still have the craft fair and the parking lot by the electric vehicle. That'll be all crafty stuff too.
Okay.
That's my
So-
only concern, is that we're gonna run traffic right into the barricades. And they'll have to back out, or try to turn around and go back down Main Street to get out.
Yep.
If we close both side streets and Main Street, at that spot right there.
Could you redirect traffic on 8th Street, saying
We would
to
have
reach the
to-
businesses?
Yeah.
Yeah, we'd
Down
have to have
there.
a detour
Correct.
sign
We'll have to have
here
it
for
right.
through traffic. Yeah, on 8, yep.
Good
And then by, you said by 11:30, this will be back open, and then just these 9th,
Yep.
9th, and 10th. And then for the run, the only other part I'm recommending is the parking right here on the east side, just for the very beginning of the race. I just wanted to cone that off, because you're gonna have a congregation of runners in the very beginning, all heading north, and I don't want them running in the middle of Main Street. So if we just did the side street parking, so they have the sidewalk and that side street parking, and as soon as the last group goes through, that can open up, because by the time they come back through, there'll be signals.
They're spread,
It'll be
yeah.
spread. And then
So
we'll
we'll-
just direct people here to head back onto the sidewalk on the east side to then finish at the band shell. And then once everyone's done, Main Street reopens, so that is clear, and it's just the 10th and the 9th. So, but we will have some sort of a detour for through traffic here. So
Yeah,
that-
we'll have to detour them, and detour them to, on 8th to Iron or Norway Street, and they can take it down the railroad.
Yep.
Yeah, they can take it down.
And then they can come back on the open part of Main if they
Yep.
need to.
Yeah.
And the access can be a couple hours anyway, when they start in the morning. and it'll be
Yeah,
fine.
yeah, it'll just.
I just didn't wanna have a mess. People are coming down there and they got nowhere to go.
No,
And then what time does the run start?
9. And Tori gave a full, in the sign up, it's 2 hours. You get 2 hours, and then everything's gonna be open and done.
So you're closing in on that block from 8:30 to 11.
Yeah.
And they'll have a detour for 2.5 hours,
Yep.
and then it'll be open.
Yep, and the
And
side
we'll have everything
parking,
set up with a detour, so
Yep.
everything will be good.
and the side parking here will be closed just for the beginning of that
Yeah,
race,
yeah.
and then they'll be open.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? If not, do I have a motion?
A motion that the Leaf American application and site permit be approved.
Support.
Mr. Pock?
Yes.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Mr. Mararo?
Yes.
Now we'll move on to item number 3, special event request, Leaf Erickson Run.
We just kind of discussed that. Yeah, the only attention I'll bring to it is, just, again, if you want to look at the map routes. Before they used to start at the school, and then you go down Section and Pine, and then start going around the township again. This year, Tori kind of took over this portion of it. She wanted to, again, bring it back to downtown, showcase different things. So, it goes north out of Main Street, the short run around Strawberry Lake, and the longer ones around Strawberry and then through the neighborhoods. So no road closures up there. We're gonna have, they're gonna have volunteers placed at certain areas to help guide runners and traffic, just so we have no conflicts.
I like the idea of keeping it more here in town.
Yeah, I think it's, again, they kind of, what I understood of this event generally is to showcase it downtown and bring people downtown. That's why we have the Viking Bucks, to try to get people to spend more money downtown. So yeah, bringing it here, it seemed to make sense. I applaud Tori for doing that.
Do I have any questions on this?
And the only change in my motion, I had 10:30, but 11. Tori even said 11:30 would be even better, but if we want to compromise 11, I'm happy with that.
That Curry Road section is not gonna be fun, running.
Yeah.
That'll test your
And we're
stamina.
And that is one area where we will be having volunteers because of the hill.
Yeah, there's some limited sight distance there, but that'll be challenging.
Do I have a motion?
I will make a motion to approve the special event for the Leif Erikson 10K, 5K, and 2-mile run as presented, with the barricades staying up until 11 a.m. instead of the listed 10:30.
Support.
Mrs. Brew,
Yes?
Mr. Kramer,
Yes.
Mr. Menegini,
Yes.
Mr. Marraro,
Yes.
Mr. Pop.
Yes.
I have one other question to go with that, didn't mean with the vote. Do we know when they're coming in to do the street? Is that gonna interfere?
I do know when. I just had a meeting today. It won't interfere, but it will be the week after
Okay,
the event, opposed to trying to get it done before the event.
okay.
So,
Move on to item number 4, ordinance 456, Chris Doyle zoning language change request.
okay. So we've discussed this a couple of times. The memo kind of gives you an overview, kind of where we've been already. I guess kind of first wanted to draw everyone's attention to that first paragraph of my memo, where again, I'm trying to remind everybody what we're really looking at first and foremost here is a zoning language change, right? So the discussion is, are we going to change the zoning code language in the B2 to allow fuel stations? So right now, in that zoning district, fuel stations are not permitted. So the 2 fuel stations that are currently existing are existing non-conforming, which means they are free to operate as they are, no questions asked. They were there beforehand, they can continue to operate. They can do improvements on the inside, minor improvements on the outside, but you cannot expand, those properties in a large capacity. And in Chris' case, it's a whole separate parcel to expand. So, that's would even necessarily qualify as part of the existing non-conforming section.
So yeah, the first thing that we're looking at is deciding, if you change this ordinance, anybody else can.
Correct. I mean,
do the same thing.
that is a possibility. Now, the way the current zoning code talks about fuel stations, it's 10,000 square feet or more of a lot size. That's 0.23 acres. There are several lots in the B2 that would qualify for that. Now, all of them, I'm pretty sure, have some sort of existing building. I'm guessing likely for that to work as a fuel station, it'd have to be torn down, and the regulatory, I don't know the real viability or not of another fuel station, brand new, coming into the B2 in those areas, but by changing the language, you do open it up to allow that. So what really we're talking about here is that. We want to allow fuel stations. If we do, then Chris Oil would be able to expand to those diesel pumps, and at that point, the site plan and all of that would be a planning commission discussion on if what they're doing works or not and putting conditions on it. Of course, we can use their site plan as kind of that catalyst of saying, well, this is our case study of if we allow it, will it work, how will it work? And you can kind of make your decision somewhat on that.
So B2 runs east city limits to west city limits?
No, B2 is essentially right here,
Ninth
at
Ave or
Stevenson's, and it
Stevenson?
goes down to roughly around here. In this section, this for a brief minute becomes R1 right here, so it's residential.
Okay.
Now, what I'm suggesting, if council does want to consider the language change, the way I kind of have it written up in the potential ordinance is using the same language we currently have for fuel stations, and that's that 10,000 square feet. But I added that in the B2, it has to be along the US 2 corridor, because we do have properties that are B2 on like Main Street. And I'm assuming we don't really want to take the risk of a gas station on Main Street. So I'm keeping the language to the US 2 corridor.
So, so really today, we're not okaying Christ Oil, or that's not really part of it, is if we want to change the zoning.
Correct. This
Then
is,
they would have to go to planning commission.
correct. I mean, we can, you guys can look at their site plan, and Ron provided some animated generation of semi-truck turning radiuses in and out of that building if you'd like to see. And again, you can certainly use their site plan as kind of helping guide you on, does something like this work? But for tonight, no, this is a conversation about allowing fuel stations in that area. Yes.
Anybody.
Yeah, if it's allowed, the next step is I would work with Christ Oil with their site plan, and we would go through all the zoning requirements. It would go to planning commission, and we would have a public hearing for that, because I'm also recommending that we approve it, we do it as a conditional use as it is in the B3 and industrial zoning districts. So a conditional use item has to go through a public hearing. In their case, because if they were going through that, we have to send out notices in the surrounding areas like any other conditional use, and that allows us to put conditions on it. It's not just a by right, they can do it. It's looking at things like turning radiuses and talking to NDOT about how can this kind of property manage that. And I was at an access management meeting today, and Ron was there as well. MDOT, their perspective is they can see how it could work. They have similar concerns about the turning radiuses from east to west coming off of Saginaw, and Ron's talked about putting signage up, for no truck entrance and this and that. MDOT's looking at, and Ron kind of helped me remember this, but MDOT's looking to see if that type of signage from their standpoint is either allowed or if they have that. And then it's also, if everyone's going to abide by those.
Right, it's allowed. What we came up with was it's allowed, but most likely not enforceable.
Then it ain't gonna be followed.
That's, to the most part, it would still,
You put up your no parking signs that stop anybody from parking there. Signage ain't gonna do it if you can't enforce it.
well, that's what Ben is checking into.
Yeah.
No idling signs, as you just heard, the guy that's saying he's willing to work with you guys. No idling signs, the guys that shut their trucks off and not idle when they're fueling, just because there's signs there, pretty much no. And that is an enforceable rule and by law. So that's the issues I have.
Well, that's
With
what
signage.
my question too was about the signage. If MDOT ain't willing to put that up, and we just put it up, and it's not enforceable.
Well, and part of it, on the idling part, and I briefly, I think, talked to Grant a little bit. I don't believe we currently have a no long-term idling ordinance. Places do have that to combat, trucks and things idling all night long when they're sleeping in their camper in certain areas. That is certainly something we should look into, to have a no long-term idling ordinance, just generally.
But when you're fueling state losses, you kind of.
When you're fueling, correct. I'm just talking about vacant lots, where, maybe we need to look at where we could allow that in the industrial area, if there's a need, but in a place like on their lot, backed up, you can see how that could have some issues. So that's something to look at down the road. That's not really part of this conversation tonight. Ron, do you want me to show those?
Yeah, and, okay, I'm curious too, if
You can come up.
you shared this with everyone.
I don't know, short of making Saginaw a one-way street.
That was talked about.
That's the only way you'll be able to enforce that.
That's another possibility. Sorry, I only have three of these with me.
And I've got one in there.
So this is the signage we were talking about.
Oh, we have that.
Both these signs, people that turn on the signal, and another sign, no semi-sign, that would be approved by your council. between this and this, trying to shut it off.
That's interesting.
And on the other side back here, because we don't want so much crossing all the way through the lot either. All these you'll see on
Can you show me where you're gonna put these signs? If
So this too, so we made them that was.
That's the three main.
But both the also.
Experience about other signage. Once we get that at the school, right, it's private property. You know, they put up no parking signs, no signs. People can park wherever they want, unless it's a handicap or state.
No signs.
coming through this property, right? That would clog that all up there. So is this you're gonna come right, supposedly what you want is to get them to come right off the highway then?
I'll show the video show.
Okay. Okay.
You want me just to go through each one?
Sure.
Okay.
You see where the time on the
Over here, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that'd be through that, and then this would be through the city of Norway, and this would be Crystal itself also.
Rob, want to narrate what's,
That's how it's coming westbound on US 2, and he entered off of US 2. I was going on Saginaw Street. And then turning westbound again on US 2.
Well, that's gonna be.
And I should say too, this is the largest legal semi. This is a 53-foot trailer and a sleeper semi combination. So that's the largest legal semi you can possibly have. Now there he turned in off of Brown Street behind the food mart.
But that alley's a one-way.
Yeah, so this illegal as heck, you shouldn't have done that, but even if one would, we could still negotiate. That's what you do.
So the one, I think the one I'm most worried about is eastbound.
yep, we have those two.
Here. So again, this one, you turn off Brown Street. Come through in front of the food mart. And then back out to US 2 again.
He comes out this way. Half of his truck's gonna be, no, and he's gonna be in this lane.
He was heading eastbound.
So he came in on 8.
No,
Or no, in the alley.
Eastbound on
Yeah,
two.
you turn into the center cover. And he's gonna go back
Eastbound.
eastbound.
So no one's gonna be able to turn, because he's gonna have to come out there wide, so no one's gonna be able to turn down from Saginaw.
He's gonna be out.
And he's gonna take.
He's
that-
gonna take out a lot of traffic use too, to the rest of those 4 lanes, I think. Show that one again.
Oh, yeah, go back to
Okay, this is the one we do not, this is what we're trying to stop. This is where they're turning, and he's coming eastbound, turning out to Saginaw. This is the one we do not want. That's where we want the signs to stop this.
because that's going from the left, crossing over to the right, and entering in.
Right.
Even though you can do it, there's definitely problems with,
Yards.
yeah. Now, all these are, like I said, are showing the worst case scenario of the largest semi. Who we don't even want as a customer. We want contractors, street body trucks. Usually a large semi like this will be part of a fleet program and they have their own centers that they go fill up at. You typically don't see them at your local convenience store.
Did you want to see that last one, the one
Yeah.
before that? So this is their turn.
He's eastbound coming in the alley.
Yeah, that's,
No issues there.
He's gonna hit the yard.
Yeah, he's coming across that whole highway almost to make that radius.
This yard, yeah, and then we, at that meeting today, we talked about, potentially, you could widen this, but the discussion was that is probably to widen it, certainly goes into private property. And so you have to get their permission to do what they did here, to avoid what you can see. I mean, you can see already, this is from, I don't know, 2018, this Google map. You can see here, the cross is on, and here's the tire mark. So there is that.
Tire marks from space.
Yeah, right, so you can see here, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, I won't look at it.
So you'd have
Yeah, look
to,
at
this is,
that.
be private property, you'd have to cut this at, I don't know the degree, Ron, they said this would be, but this, I believe, is the gentleman's house that was.
Yes, yeah, that's right.
Was here.
So their right of way is the opposite, it's the far side of the sidewalk.
Yeah.
So it can be.
This would be city right away here.
Yes.
And then this is, theirs here, so it would go into both.
But our goal, basically, once this is in place and operating, it's pretty much, again, that side setting is not really well to the site, so we're not catering to it. We're catering to vehicles that can handle these situations.
But I'm sure you're gonna have some that are gonna,
Well,
there's no way of stopping it.
for the last 20-some years, we've had many, and have been just without any order to the site. Yeah, there's been problems. So now we're come a long way with getting order to the site. Even some of the problems was a local resident that's his occupation, but he was parking in a semi there for the weekend and blocking your site triangle for Highway 2. So the chief of police found a place in the industrial park that he can park at, and so we've been working with him, trying to figure out different scenarios.
If you want to look at my recommendation, I spoke to Ron after this meeting this afternoon about my recommendation. My thing is I can't tell you if this is going to certainly cause more congestion or safety concerns. I don't know. A good semi-truck driver, it could potentially be absolutely fine. I can't predict that. So really all I can tell council is that at some point when zoning changed, a council decided that to take out fuel stations as a permitted use in this zone, and typically when that happens, it's because that council at that time had decided that fuel stations continuing in that zone just what did not fit whatever long-term plan they had in mind. And that's typically how you get to these situations where current businesses become an existing non-conforming.
Yeah, that's kind of the hardship's the right word, but Chris did own this before the zoning was changed. So now they're here, they sit with a piece of land that they want to develop.
And I do not know when fuel stations were removed from the B2, or if the B2 is a new district that removed it compared to when they owned this property. I can look into that. I don't know that often. But again, that's typically what happens, is that the vision that someone had was saying, we no longer want fuel stations in this kind of our, downtown area, and they want them in those further out B3s and industrial. That's just generally how we get there. And, if council is too concerned with the potential hazards with this and potential hazards with other possible fuel stations, then it's best to keep it as is.
I believe I was asked one time early on if we wanted to change it. Might have been the same scenario, they wanted that.
This came to council in, I want to say 2007. I don't know if either of you guys were involved. I wasn't here, obviously.
No, you weren't.
At that time, it was discussing rezoning this parcel to B3, which allows fuel stations. My kind of comment on that when we started this was, well, you have no B3 that are contiguous with this property. And generally that's a bad idea to spot zone a single property. You have to get these two properties rezoned to B3, and then you can say, okay, well, it's contiguous to make it into that zone, but you do have a residential house, and I think that'd be a tough. But that is how you would typically rezone it to a different zone as if it was a contiguous movement, like we did with a different parcel.
Chris owns that property east of Brown, right?
This, yes, they almost, yep.
I mean, have you guys ever thought about doing, couldn't this be like a multi-faceted expansion? Where your US 8 traffic could roll through that, put something over there for, to help with the congestion, instead of having to take these big trucks and turn them around in circles? You follow me?
I know for a while there was discussion of Chris giving it to the city.
Because I can see,
I think there was better intention, better use plan for that land.
your westbound to southbound trucks would be easy. Your eastbound to southbound trucks would that'd be an easy pull through for them. I don't know if you're ever gonna get around the problem with the eastbound eastbound trucks getting back out.
Yeah, if we were gonna talk about this property, we're still in the same
You're still
spot
in
we
the
are
same
today.
zone.
It's still what the language changed.
Well, I understand, but there's a lot of other issues I think the council's considering now besides zoning, right? We're
Yeah.
worried about traffic flow.
Yes. Yep. Like I
And
said,
safety.
yep, that's where we're using, this as kind of a way
Just an
to
example.
get you guys to kind of think through that whole thing of what would happen if we made that change in the language.
You see what I'm saying there?
I could try to start going back to when these zoning changes were made and see, in the minutes, and see what that conversation was.
I believe it was the same thing, because I remember revisiting when I was on the council.
There must have been a larger,
Yeah,
I just don't know when the B2 came into existence.
it was before I was here, so that
Yes.
was-
I'm certain it was probably a long time
I
ago.
grew up at gas stations everywhere.
Well, which is probably kind of one of the reasons that if there were a lot of little gas stations downtown, that was probably part of when they decided, as they were closing, to not want, because I think there was one like right here, which was very common a long time ago in a lot of different places.
Yeah,
So
we
again,
had
it's,
one right where the bike
yeah, right.
park is.
Right. So it's really about what was the kind of vision back then that got us here, and kind of the council's discussion of, do you share what that vision was and why they went down that? If you decide to allow it, we would, plan a commission, and we'd be working with them to try to figure out every way to mitigate every potential hazard. It's just none of it obviously is a guarantee. It's just the nature of this kind of situation.
And how many, in the future, how many different sites? I don't think there's any easy sites in town to do the same activity that we're trying to do.
It is a pretty small, the B2 along the US 2 corridor is a pretty finite.
Yes, like I said, there's
Yeah.
a few, I went through quite a few to try to find that .23, and there are several, but again, this may be the only vacant lot that would
You'd
qualify
have to
for
buy
size. So
something.
you'd have to buy something, you'd probably have to raise the building. I have no idea about environmental stuff,
I
regulations
agree.
around a tank and all that, so, I think the
What,
likelihood is low, but again,
I know it's requirements 10,000 square feet, and we have 15,000 square feet on that site, so we're half again as big as needed, so we're.
I have a question about, the planning commission and their ability to, not approve or approve, the site plan.
so kind of how that would.
Yeah, I mean,
So if it's a conditional use, which is what I would recommend, conditional uses aren't there to simply give you the ability to say no because of an arbitrary reason.
that's what I'm
You have
asking
to
for.
go through kind of steps and answer some questions, which is, I don't have it in this, I had it in some previous ones, but.
There is a type
They
of
wanna
rubric
move- yeah, you-
that they're
and you
going
look at
through.
something like this, and you would, they would look at that and say, well, we are concerned with this traffic turning radius, Ron, what can we do to make sure we mitigate these concerns? And that's when we work with them to go, okay, well, what we just did, look at those renderings, and we decide, can we alleviate the concern? If we can find ways to alleviate the concern, through a site plan, then they can move forward. If the planning commission looks at that and says, they're concerned, I don't think this is gonna work, and they don't see a possible there, if Chris can't meet the condition, they could deny it. But it is I would probably consult legally on what those reasoning are to make sure that they are valid.
I'm kind of approaching this, looking at this through the same lens as we did with the dispensary issue. You know, we have this commission. I value their work and time and that they can do the deep dive into this. I don't want to give the impression of pushing the job off on them. I don't want to give the impression of us not listening to their expertise, much like we did with our marijuana ordinance, you know, our committee that we formed there.
I mean, planning commission, one of their jobs is in fact to review and approve site plans for all conditional uses.
Yeah.
And in general commercial, it kind of says it's my option if I do it by myself or move it to planning. I'm always taking commercial stuff to planning.
Okay.
This is the general, so I'm always consistent.
It's a very unique situation. You've got two major US highways coming together in that residential area. 1 block away from Main Street, basically, right? So there's so much congestion there already. I mean, how many towns have that, right? Where you have that kind of traffic flow to, you know, from a 2-lane US highway into a 4-lane US highway right in the middle of a residential area. As I said, with the downtown up 2 blocks over.
It'd be
You know.
different if we had a stoplight there.
That's,
And MDOT is.
and they won't do it, right?
A little bit different because it's another state, but in Crandon, Wisconsin, we just, similar to this situation, we just passed. And again, using site, again, stating that the water semis are not going to be your main customer. So, but a lot of the same concerns, everything else, but.
I don't think it's going to affect a decrease or increase of traffic heading down 8 or 2. It's just going to be the entering and exiting
Exactly.
off of 2.
Exactly. There's not gonna increase the traffic.
Yeah.
That's what it's gonna do to the traffic it already has, right?
Right, but it's gonna be the trucks pulling off and off.
Yeah, and I guess I fall under the idea of if that's how it's designed and if that's how it works and it's not working for the first person it's not going to work for is them, or the drivers, I should say. The drivers are going to be, this is ridiculous, you know, it's not going to work. If it doesn't work for the drivers, it's not going to work. You know, they'll be the first, they're the canary in the coal mine, if you will. You know, if they're not changing their traffic pattern to fit this rather unique style, then the issue is going to take care of itself that way. I would hate to see a business invest money and then it not pay off. But I think the professional drivers aren't going to put themselves in an odd situation.
I do appreciate the worst case scenario, the 2 guys under full miles.
And there are a lot of smaller,
No doubt,
that could.
a lot of diesel trucks.
Yeah.
And even just smaller, like I said, construction type.
That's what I mean.
So-
That's what we look for.
I kind of jokingly asked Ron if they just lower the canopy so no semi trucks could get in there, but I didn't think he.
So what's the next steps
Let's
here?
explore that idea.
Well, right now, we're gonna decide whether
Well-
we're gonna,
Let it go to the planning commission?
Well,
or if we're gonna change, we gotta change the
so
zone.
planning commission, remember, planning commission looked at this site plan, and, because the planning commission did just what you guys are doing now. Because part of planning commission's job is to do what you're doing. They looked at Chris Boyle, or zoning language change for the same thing that we're talking about now, and they did recommend that we change it. You know, they felt they could solve the issues of the site, of the turning and all that with the site plan, kind of like you guys are talking now. So planning commission, this time around, as we had it before, and it's in here, the motion is in here, to approve it. The previous planning commission in '07 denied it, as a council. So different people, different time, different conversation, well, same conversation, just, discussing at a different time. The only change that I again recommended from the planning commission is at the time, we had kept it in the highway overlay district, and what that did was essentially accomplish the same thing as the US 2 corridor language, but I just think the US 2 corridor is a cleaner, easier addition instead of saying the highway overlay district.
What worries me is, we change the language, you're really not gonna know until they're in there, and then you're gonna start hearing from the neighbors and everybody else.
Well, if we change it, they gotta go through more steps. We gotta have a public
Correct.
hearing, we gotta have all that. And then it would come to us for the final vote, right? Or is it the planning commission?
No, it
Planning
doesn't.
commission.
So what happens
We
if you
used to
were,
have the final vote, but I don't know what happened.
I'll review the.
Or a series of letters that go.
Yeah, I'll review the zoning. The way I believe it reads is that, planning commission reviews and approves site plans and conditional use site plans. I think it can come to council, maybe I think it's denied and it's requested by the petitioner. I don't think what you want to do is get into a habit of requesting certain ones and not others.
Well, you'd have to do them all.
But what would happen if council approved the zoning language change, then that would, because we already had a public hearing at planning commission for this, and we had a public hearing here for this once
So
on this
we're,
topic.
this is it, this is the end of our oversight right here if we,
Yep.
Yeah, because you're gonna do the language change.
that's bad news.
And then from there, we go to planning commission for site plan review. As a conditional use, we would send out letters to everyone within 300 feet. And we'd have that public hearing for site plan review at planning. And then that's where you have likely neighbors coming in because they are getting the letters in the mail about the site plan. And it's the neighbor's time to come in there and express their concerns like one did tonight. And that's when planning commission is hearing these concerns and looking at the site plan and trying to mitigate all of those concerns.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I do think Chris has been in the community a long time and part of the community a long time, and I do believe they've earned the right to take this a step further, to Scott's point. But with no oversight from if this is where oversight ends from the council, I'm wary to, personally vote yes for a zoning change.
I mean, you could just give an example, I suppose. If a commercial building wanted to be put up right there, I don't say retail, and was in a allowable use, again, council wouldn't see that. You wouldn't have probably the concerns with traffic because you would maybe some for deliveries, but planning commission has typically always reviewed those and approved them. And in fact, and by right uses or even a simpler process, it's just.
And what worries me is, you can say you have nothing else there, but if somebody decides to sell their house or whatever, we have no hearsay and we could end,
You would be, if it was allowable use through conditional, you would go through that process with planning commission again for site plan.
Personally, I think the day of small gas stations are way gone. So it'd have to be a pretty big player, and they're not gonna come in and buy a house lot and put a gas station. I'm not even worried about future ramifications. Personally, as far as all of a sudden there's gonna be gas stations popping up on every corner of.
well, I don't
B2
think every
sector.
corner, but it could happen.
Yeah. And I don't mean that in a bad way, Ken. I'm just saying, to me, again, it's a tough one. For me, it's mostly traffic and what it's gonna do.
That's my main concern.
And I don't know, and Grant, I don't know if you can help me with this. If council approves the zoning language change
Dragging Grant into this.
and
What do we pay you for again?
and we go through the site plan review with planning commission and they look at all the potential problems and they put all the conditions in and it's approved and we find an extreme amount of congestion and accidents, what is our ability to re-review that site plan?
Well, I'm gonna feel pretty sorry for Chris, because they just put millions of dollars in the corner, and now we're gonna pull their zoning?
It would be looking at certain things, it'd have to be reasonable things, like say, okay, there's an issue here, we need to.
If I could interject, this is pretty much the reason why we have that corridor committee, is because we want to make everything safe. So that's why we spent so much time discussing with them and getting their complete approval on that it's not creating a hazard, is the reason for the.
And I do appreciate you doing
Yeah.
that work, and I appreciate after you left here, we got signs put up, and it's just not an easy decision to make.
And I'm not gonna say that corridor committee necessarily approved this.
Well,
They're looking at
Well,
this
that's
and
the
doing
reason
what,
for the quarter.
correct, but they're not gonna be there to approve or deny anything. They're there to make recommendations. They certainly saw the same congestion issues that we're all talking about today. But, you know, yeah, they look at that and say, they could see how it could work. But they also can see
What
how
they
it
would
could
do
cause a
too
problem.
is eliminate our access to this too, if they thought it was unsafe. So that's what.
Well, see their thing, you know, once again, I get back to the point that you folks are really the only business in that area, the rest is residential, right? So
Yeah.
we're gonna take a beating when those letters go out, and then, you know, basically for us, that horse has already left the barn, because we're not gonna, you know, all we can say to our constituents is, hey, go talk to the planning commission, right? The way it sits right now, Grant?
Yeah, the planning, I think you guys have kind of worked your way through it, but just to be clear, the planning commission is not designed to deny.
Right, right.
That's what I'm asking.
They're meant to work, as Dan said, work with the businesses to address concerns, address issues, work with them to come up with solutions, and to make sure that businesses that are permitted and that are allowed under conditional uses are able to open.
Grant, are we allowed to send those letters to the radius, like now? Can we say, look, we're considering this change for a possible crystal oil expansion? Can we send those letters out and get the feel now before we have to make this big decision?
Requesting to have a public hearing, if you will, putting a notice out there and
Which we did have a public hearing for this, but the difference is we didn't send letters out to the radius because it was a B2. That's letters to every single person in 300 radius of the entire B2. But we certainly could, just as if a site plan conditional use grant. I mean,
it's council's prerogative.
Yeah.
If the council
I mean, I think that's what it's about for me.
I think what I'm hearing, I think with respect to Citgo for the work they've done here for years.
Chris.
Chris, yeah. And you know, you've got the part that lot is empty. You know, and council's been consistent with wanting and iterated over and over again. They want to see businesses come to the community. So I get it, and I respect listening to council and struggling with this. There's a lot of back and forth, so if council feels as though that's giving this entity the best shake in addressing concerns of the constituents, certainly not gonna stop, so have a public hearing.
As far as the neighbors go too, Brian and his wife Sherry, if you remember when she was talking last time we were discussing this, her and her husband had spearheaded all the neighbors to go against this. And so they completely changed and they're welcoming us. Since we're trying to control it.
Yeah, but I would wanna know that myself.
And that's very good input. We thank you guys for your hard work there.
Yeah.
That's great. That's being what part of the community means, right? You know, working with those folks, understand their concerns as well. And I was gonna kinda hammer you on that whole thing, because I did take a ride up after that council meeting. I didn't see any no parking signs or no nothing signs up there, but you guys taking steps with that and also with your neighbors.
The neighbor directly to the south, I'm sorry, I forget her name right now. I've talked to her quite a bit too, and she's all in favor.
Good. But I think to Candy's point, Emil's point, it'd be nice to get those letters out, Candy, and hear back.
This has nothing to do with them, though. This
No, not
has
at
to do with the
this point.
zoning,
Yeah,
changing the zoning.
Yeah.
This has nothing to do with
it
them.
really
No,
does.
I totally understand that, but if we change the zoning tonight, there's no going
We're
back.
not.
No, no.
No, we're, yeah.
And that's what I'm saying.
like if
And-
this was like a rezone of this parcel, then it would have been a public hearing and all those letters would be required to go out. But, yeah. Go ahead.
No, I totally understand where we're at. I'm trying to find a way
Yeah,
that
you
before we have to vote on this, we can hear from the folks that are gonna be most affected by it.
But it's, tonight, yeah, it's if you wanna change the zoning, so, you know. We gotta kinda keep it to that. Do we even wanna change the zoning?
Well,
You know. know, so if nobody else has any questions, do I have any motions for tonight?
Just for clarification, Dan, you're hoping that the language B2 parcel is also part of the US2 corridor or the highway overlay district?
So I'm suggesting that it's
The corridor.
to be on the US 2 corridor.
Okay.
So what that would be is if you.
That's all I needed.
Yeah, so B2 parcels within
Okay.
the US 2 corridor.
So I want to make a motion that the city council add gasoline service stations on lots of 10,000 square feet or greater as a conditional use in the B2 zoning district only when the B2 parcel is also part of the US2 corridor.
If I can really just interject, we do have an ordinance number for that, so approving.
Ordinance 456, also known as Ordinance 456.
Correct.
Do I have a second? No second? Motion fails.
Can I just ask, kind of, is there a direction on anything we talked about, letters and things like that? Do we want to do anything else?
That if not, if we don't want to change the ordinance,
Okay.
because there's no need it.
But do we not want to change the ordinance because we're worried about what the neighbors are thinking about, or we just don't want to change the ordinance at all? What was, I get,
I didn't see a second to it, so.
but I'm asking for what was, people might have several different reasons why they didn't second it. And, I mean, I think I've heard from at least a couple of you that was, man, if we had more info from the neighbors,
Correct.
Maybe I wouldn't be
Right.
opposed to it.
That's where I'm at.
So is there a mechanism that we're asking the city or Chris to do?
All right, well, is there any other motions?
If someone wanted, if there was other alternatives, if someone, I suppose, could motion, correct me if I'm wrong, but if they could motion to have us hold another public hearing for the zoning language change and would like us to send out the letters within 300 feet as we would with a conditional use. Grant, is that?
Well, starts to get in a little bit, I mean, it's on the agenda, it was voted, so it was voted down. I think that's, I don't think it's gonna be a motion for that, it's something that can be discussed, or if the council wishes to revisit this in the future. Last time,
Right.
I don't like to,
No,
get
you
into
don't.
tabling things and revisiting more. I think, the company would like some closure one way or the other as well, maybe. But I think that if council wishes to send out those letters, right, so just indicate that to Mr. Stolper.
Because we can always put it back on
Bring
the
this up.
Yes,
Yeah, I think the planning commission unanimously approved, this change,
they did.
right? They brought it to council. I feel that I would like to hear from the immediate neighbors, the ones that's gonna be affected the most by this. And not just from Ron and Mr. Polich, but, from actual letters to give them a chance to respond. And then bring this back up again. I do, like I said earlier, I do think Chris deserves a chance to take this to the nth degree if they so choose. And I wanna find out exactly what the neighbors think of it before I'm ready to just totally, make a decision. Brett?
That's right. That's right. I mean, me personally, it's a B2, not a B3. And I really don't want to change the language on B2s and get in that nature of doing that. That's why we have B3 zones.
And I don't think
It's
there's
unfortunate, you know what I mean? But that's just how I'm looking at them terms.
The way I'm looking at it is the same way Brett's looking at it.
I don't think there's another
wanna
place
change.
in that area that you can change to a B3, that you can have that. I mean, safety, it's the safety. Not just on this parcel, it's all along the corridor, the whole area that you want to change to B3.
But absolutely, listening to the neighbors and getting their concerns and feedback, I think is a good resource as well. But that's just my personal opinion.
And just to clarify, Scott, we're not rezoning to B3, but we're changing the language.
Changing language,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right, so. Yeah, any other discussion?
None for me.
All right. All right, we'll move on. Move on, number 5, firewall software upgrade purchase request.
So, Chris, our IT, and GoTech was gonna try to, we're gonna have this on the September 20th meeting, but I wasn't sure what was gonna happen with that meeting, because I wasn't gonna be here, so we put it here, he was unavailable to come. So this is a security, and I had him write up a synopsis here, because this is not my expertise, but it's a security software that we've had for 11 years, and it's run its course, and the support for it is no longer available, and so this is the upgrade to that, our computer, our network security. Jeff, if you have better understanding than I do of this, but.
Yeah, I understand it fine, but I see one quote again.
Well, this is, the reason why,
I understand. We picked GoTech beginning of the year. We're all on the record saying we want to shop our IT services. I get it, you can't change IT services midstream necessarily, but this is what we're talking about right here.
Yep.
$8,800, and we're just taking them straight up, straight up 100% trust, man.
My understanding is that they're gonna give us, this is the best rate for this particular software, and this is what we currently have, and we have to change, again, my understanding, we'd have to change a lot more, it'd be more expensive to go to a different company, a different software. So we could get 3 quotes, I suppose, on a completely different setup, but if we want to stick with what we have and what works and what's integrated, this was the best price for them for that. Is again, Chris isn't here, this is my understanding of what he was telling me.
Our IT services contract comes up every year?
Yes, and like we discussed, that
Every January, basically January 1st meeting, kind of first meeting in January type thing?
no, I mean, it's tied to our budget, so it would be fiscal year.
Whoa. So we're locked in the next July 1st?
So,
We didn't just go on that before.
Yeah, no offense, but I didn't think so either.
Just carried over.
well, that's part of the fiscal budget that you guys
Okay.
approved back in July.
What I would like to see personally, not speaking for anybody but myself, is since you have almost a year, or whatever it is, 10 months, I want to see some other IT firms in here presenting to us with ideas and how they would take care of the city of Norway's needs all the way around.
Yep.
And more than one.
Right, so we discussed that last time, and I've informed GoTech of that.
And that has nothing to do with
And they
GoTech's
are-
performance, by the
No.
way. This is no reflection on GoTech, this is just, I want us to have something to compare them.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
No, and that's with any of those things, IT, attorneys, any of these things.
He threw you under the bus quick, didn't he?
Council members?
But it is always correct to do your due diligence on those long-term services.
Yep.
And Chris knows that, I told him that, and as you said, you don't want to do it in the
Nope.
middle of it and it's fiscal, so he's working on that, he knows it's coming, and we'll have to put out an RFP. So that is certainly something that we are working forward.
We all know how important firewall protection is in this wonderful time of cybercrime, so.
And for the record, I have no problem with our attorney.
Do I have a motion on the firewall software upgrade purchase request?
Yeah, I motion we approve the purchase of firewall software package as presented in the quote from GoTech for not to exceed $8,844.85.
Support.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Mr. Marraro?
Yes.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes. Move on to mayor council comments.
Go.
Oh, I'm sorry. Item number 6, September 20th council meeting schedule.
So the reason why this is on here, the mayor and I are going to be at an MMEA conference in Marquette for this meeting. So this is if council wants to try to reschedule it for this month. I think there's not a lot of good dates to have that because of that conference. If we do it, we schedule it for next week, obviously not a lot of time for that. We schedule it for the week after the conference, I'd essentially have to get that agenda ready next week, which I'm not sure what we'll have for that. So I guess I'm kind of recommending we just keep it the 20th, assuming that our Mayor Pro Tem, Mr. Pop, will be here and that we'll have a quorum. We can keep it simple with manifest,
You'll be here,
minutes,
Scott?
Yeah.
things like that. Any emergency type items we can put on there. I can remote in if need be, the mayor and I both could. Mayor won't have a vote ability, but we could do that. So I would just keep the 20th and we'll just try to keep it as streamlined as possible.
So if there's anything then.
That's good.
All right. Now we'll move on to mayor council comments. Scott?
I have nothing for tonight.
Brett?
I have nothing.
Jeff?
I'd like to thank Chris for all their hard work in this. I wish we could took it a little bit further, but I don't know where it goes from here. Also would like to thank the planning commission for their hard work on this whole thing, Barb and the crew. So that's it.
I'm thinking about the 17 years ago or 16 years ago, the last time that the zoning changed. And I'm just thinking about the changes that have happened along the US 2 corridor in that time. Not just the B2 district, but the whole corridor. Bernie's Back In / Happy Days, vacant building. Grease Lightning, Northwoods Pub, Dr. Zanoni's, which went to the vet clinic, which is now Marshfields, that's fantastic. The old Car Quest building, Talon's Restaurant, the Viking Inn, and an empty parking lot.
The Vikings sold.
Good, that's great to hear.
So do Car Cooks, so.
Yeah. The Celios, DCH, Marshfield, Dr. Mervich, all the stuff that's been in and out of that building. Cheniers, which was, I can't remember the name of the greenhouse it was before that. The America Inn is switched around quite a few times. Dr. Say's office. It's not the US 2 corridor it used to be. There's more vacant buildings there than I can remember, being a almost lifelong resident. I'd really like to see properties be developed along there. I really would. That's all.
I have nothing for tonight.
I'll just say for a couple of announcements, I suppose. So again, the Main Street road construction will start the second week of October, and the week before that, we do have Leaf Erickson, October 7th, and the run for everyone to sign up and check out the website for all the information. And that's all.
Brett?
Well, so.
No? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion with adjourn.
Support.
Mr. Mararo?
Yes.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Meeting adjourned.
Grant, here, legal question.